Okay, so Lekha Mataji can go first because she has to go home and she wants to read before going. So please, Lekha Mataji, go ahead.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. 6:4:15. Alam dad gadhai drumair dinaihi khilanam shivamastuvaha varshi hyesa vara kanya patnitve pratigrihyatam. Translation: there is no need to burn these poor trees any longer. Let whatever trees still remain be happy. Indeed, you should also be happy. Now, here is a beautiful, well-qualified girl named Marisha, who was raised by the trees as their daughter. You may accept this beautiful girl as your wife.
Okay, since there is no report. Oh, sorry, Mataji. 1 second. It's 14. Sorry, not 14. Thinking how. Okay, yeah, this is the verse. Sorry.
Oh, okay, Prabhu. No problem.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
Tam pujayitva viditvat pratyutthanar hanadibihi kritatithyam upasidat shukashinam samahitaha. Translation: Chitraketu immediately stood up from his throne and offered him worship. He offered drinking water and eatables and in this way performed his duty as a host to a great guest. When the rishi was seated very comfortably, the king, restraining his mind and senses, sat on the ground at the side of the rishi's feet.
Okay, so just to give a context of where we are. So this is Mara Chitraketu. And this is the verse that we ended on last time. If you all remember, we ended with this word Yadrichaya. Yadrichaya means suddenly. Suddenly, the sage appeared. And this word Yadrichaya, as we talked last time, appears several times in the Bhagavatam. In the case of Indradumna Maharaj also, Yadrichaya was used suddenly when Agastya Muni came. So suddenly, out of the blue, somewhere, like a sage appeared. And similarly, in the case of sage Angira also, he appeared, a powerful sage named Angira appeared, and he was traveling all over the universe, but he happened to be there at that point in time. And that leads us to this today's verse, which is what Lekha Mataji just read. So Chitraketu immediately stood up from his throne and offered him worship as a mark of respect. He offered drinking water, eatables, and this way performed his duty as a host to a great guest. Do you want to say anything, Mataji, in this, or should we move to the next verse?
I think you covered it pretty well, Prabhu. I'll just move to the next one.
Okay. This one.
Okay, verse 16. Maharshistam upasinam prashrayavanatam kshitau pratipujya maharaja samabhashyedam abravit. Translation: O King Parikshit, when Chitraketu bent low in humility, was seated at the lotus feet of the great sage, the sage congratulated him for his humility and hospitality. The sage addressed him in the following words.
Okay, let's move on to the next verse. And Lekha Mataji, you can continue.
Okay, verse 17. Angira uvacha apite namayam swasti prakritinam tatatmanah yata prakritibhir guptah puman raja cha saptabhihi. Translation: The great sage Angira said, My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by 7 elements: his instructor, who is a Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. Purport: As it is quoted by Sridhar Swami in his Bhagavatam commentary, Swami Amatyau Janapada Durga Dravina Sanchayaha Dando Mitram cha tasyaitaha sapta prakritayo mataha. A king is not alone. He first has a spiritual master, the supreme guide. Then come his ministers, his kingdom, his fortifications, his treasury, his system of law and order, and his friends or allies. If these 7 are properly maintained, the king is happy. Similarly, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, Dehinos Menyata Dehe, the living entity, the soul, is within the material covering of Mahatattva, ego, and Panchatanmatra, the 5 objects of sense gratification. When these 7 are in proper order, the living entity is in a mode of pleasure. Generally, when the associates of the king are quiet and obedient, the king can be happy. Therefore, the great sage Angira Rishi inquired about the king's personal health and the good fortune of his 7 associates. When we inquire from a friend whether everything is well, we are concerned not only with his personal self, but also with his family, his source of income, and his assistants or servants. All of them must be well, and then a person can be happy.
Yes, Mataji, you want to share something about this?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm looking forward to what the purport flows into, because I think this is something that I really like how when the Rishi, although he does not have any of these paraphernalia with him being a Rishi, he understands what as a king, what does he need? So for every soul placed on their position, they all need certain certain paraphernalia for them to be happy, materially happy. So I'm very excited to see what the purport flows into it and how we can relate what we need for us to have a very satisfied, content life. That also takes us towards spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah. So this brings us to the first point of discussion that I mentioned in the WhatsApp group. So the first point is that why would the sage care about the king's material needs in one sense, right? I mean, he could have just asked him, how is your spiritual life going? How are you doing your sadhana or something like that? So here the sage is clearly asking, I hope your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. So why is this? So this is the first point that I wanted to ask or bring out, in the sense that do we have to be materially stable in order to elevate spiritually? So one one example I want to throw here is that let's say someone is really struggling for money or really poor or extremely sick. Will they be able to turn to God if they were not previously God conscious? That is the point that I wanted to open up for discussion, and I want to hear everybody's thoughts on that.
I think it'll be very hard for somebody to turn towards God in that situation, because at that time I think there'll only be anger and then questioning the existence of God. If somebody is not aware of one's relationship with God, I think mostly it'll just be anger and helplessness manifesting itself as anger.
So what you're mentioning is a distress, Mataji. What you're talking about is distress. So interestingly, when distress hits the soul, you can either get disconnected from God or you can get reconnected to God. One of these two things will happen when distress hits. So what I'm talking about is slightly different. I'm talking about material stability. Like let's say if you don't have a job, or if you're in anxiety of some material needs that have not been fulfilled, will you be able to elevate your consciousness spiritually? That's the discussion I want to have. It's slightly different from what you're saying. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's no distress as such, but some material needs have not been fulfilled. There's no stability. The person is in anxiety of maintaining the family, or so on a day-to-day basis. Krishnan Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So, the way I was thinking about this is, let's say you're materially prosperous or not prosperous. Let's say we put that in one axis, maybe on the x-axis. And then the y-axis, you put anxiety, whether you're anxious about it or not anxious about it. And, so having material stability is, I don't think it matters. What matters is how anxious we are about our material stability. Because there are a lot of examples in the Bhagavatam of of people who are not very well to do, but who are spiritually accomplished. So that means, material stability is not a prerequisite for spiritual progress. But understanding, the anxiety in the mind, which is for the material stability, is probably a little more important.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. So what you're saying is slightly different in the saying that how anxious a person is towards their needs is more important. Like if a person is really anxious, then they will not be able to progress spiritually. But if a person is not at all anxious, is detached from all his material needs, then they can elevate spiritually, is what you're saying. Am I right, Prabhu? In summarizing?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah,
So
that's
there are two more devotees who want to speak. Let's see. So yeah, Nitya wants to speak first.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Yeah, so something similar to what Krishnan Prabhu had also said. We have so many examples in the in the Bhagavatam, in Ramayana, in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Maharaj Bharat in Ramayana, he forego his kingdom that he got from abandoning, or his mother Kaikeyi, sent Ram in exile. Lord Ram in exile, and then he wasn't happy about it, and he actually situated himself in a very austere situation, and he actually pretty much ran the whole kingdom from within the premises of a small, like a kutir kind of a setup, like a very austere setup. And he ate very little, he slept very little, and he was constantly meditating on Lord Ram, and he for him that was that we might think that he was punishing himself so that Lord Ram would understand that his position of not being associated with his mother's ways, and that is one thing. But then to be able to do this for many years continuously, it's something. And so and also we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Koluveche Sridhar, he is very poor. He has a very thatched roof with a lot of holes in it. When it rains, it will actually come through the roof into his it will pour down inside his home. And he had very little. He sells banana leaves, and that too for a very discounted price. And but still he was is a very ardent devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so, and also we see a lot of examples in other places like this. So it is I mean, there are two things here that in my mind, this is what I'm thinking, is that it is definitely a state of mind. The comfort that we need is definitely a state of mind. It's not it cannot be quantified in terms of, okay, when I have this much, I will be comfortable. It's about, even if we have nothing, we can still be comfortable. From these examples, we can see, of course, these are all very exalted devotees, and we should not be, unjustly compare ourselves with them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, trying to understand that this comforts is at the mind level is also important for us so that at least at some point we can let go of these and not keep accumulating those needs and wants that we have in terms of material comforts. So having said this, there is definitely a bare minimum needs that we all want, like roof on top of our head, and no need to worry if where my next meal is going to come from. No need to worry about how am I going to pay my rent or mortgage, or whatever that the case may be. Having all of these basic needs are satisfied, definitely we can be situated in a better position to continue our spirituality. So so it's not bothering us. Yeah, but striving to a point where we are at this level is important. Then okay, if I have we already have a car. If we have that car, maybe I'll be more satisfied. Maybe if I move to a suburban area where there is more space to park and I don't have to worry about parking every day, then I'm just talking about myself here. And maybe I'll be happier there. It is all in a state of mind. This is what we've been given. This is it for this life. And if it happens, it's well and good. But if it doesn't, then we can. It's still okay. At least Krishna keeps has kept me is happy and healthy.
Yeah.
We have to count our blessings at every point, and that's all I wanted to convey.
Yeah, wonderful points. I think both you and Krishna Prabhu made. But the one common factor between what the examples that both of you gave are like the example that you gave of Bharat Maharaj, the example that you gave of Kulavecha Sridhar. They were already devotees of the Lord. What I'm trying to say is, let's say we try to give Krishna consciousness to a person, and that person is going through some material anxieties. Then will that person be able to take to Krishna consciousness if that person is going through those anxieties? So that is why it is said that when someone has a lot of pleasure or a lot of pain, it is extremely difficult for them to take to God consciousness. That is why when the heavenly planets also is not recommended, and even the hellish planets is not recommended, but the earth planet is recommended because it's almost 50-50 here. It's 50% pain, 50% pleasure. If you go to the heavenly planets, it's 90% pleasure and 10% pain. If you go to the hellish planets, as we go down, it becomes 90% pain and 10% pleasure. And coming back to the same point here, a similar example, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, now Vasudev Datta was also a pure devotee of the Lord. You could easily think that, okay, Vasudev Datta is a pure devotee of the Lord. Now, why is the Lord, if you read these three verses, this is in CC, Madhya Leela 1593, 95 and 96. The Lord is saying, take care of Vasudeva Datta very nicely. Being a householder, Vasudeva Datta needs to save some money. Because he's not doing so, it is very difficult for him to maintain his family. See here, I want to highlight this because the Lord himself, the Lord himself is caring for his devotee, a pure devotee actually. He could have just said, Vasudeva Datta is a pure devotee. Why should I even care about his material needs? And the last thing is, please take care of Vasudeva Datta's family affairs. He's telling Shivananda Sen, who's an expert finance person, So please take care of Vasudeva Datta's family affairs, become his manager, and make the proper adjustments. So here he could have just said that, oh, thank you, Jagannath Gopal Prabhu. He could have just said that, Vasudeva Datta is a pure devotee. He is my devotee. I don't even have to tell him to take care of his material needs, or I don't even have to worry about his material needs. So any thoughts on this? So is it important for material stability? Again, so thank you, Megha, for joining. A question to you as well. Is it important to be material stable in order to turn towards God and grow spiritually? Anyone else wants to talk about this? Sundari Saki Mataji, Sindhu Kanya Mataji, Vamshidhar Gopal Prabhu, Jagannath Gopal Prabhu. Jagannath Gopal Prabhu, please go ahead.
So it depends on various factors. It depends mainly on, I guess, how advanced we are. And so the more advanced we are, the more we actually become indifferent to these material things.
Exactly.
But then I feel, especially when our existence is not just our own existence, because most of us are not sannyasis, most of us are not brahmacharis or people in renounced order of life. We are social beings in the sense that we have our family dependent on us, like that. So what I feel is stability is required. Stability is required, and especially when we are conditioned, and especially I feel when others are dependent on us, stability is definitely required to practice bhakti properly. Otherwise, it goes into the zone of callousness and indifference. So that is what I feel. And then even this whole detachment concept, it has to be taken very organically. It doesn't come suddenly that I started practicing bhakti, so I'll practice detachment from, material things. Doesn't work that way. Slowly but organically, we, while being materially stable, we try to give up the attachment. Mainly, it's internal, I feel. It's not that's also one point. It's not exactly about externally giving up things. Internally, how much we are stably situated in Krishna consciousness, that is important. Now, you yourself mentioned the example of Sundar Gopal Prabhu when he had lost his job. He
Yes.
was very, very calm and peaceful in one sense. It did not put him into the kind of anxiety that some other person might be put through when that person loses his or her job. So I guess that's also one factor, how how advanced we are and how much we have taken shelter of Krishna, in the sense of the one of the symptoms of one of not one of the symptoms one of the limbs of surrender is rakshishyati iti vishvaso. Krishna will protect me, and gopatritve varnam tata, that Krishna is our maintainer. So to have faith in these two aspects is one of are two of the limbs of surrender. So I think the more intensely we are able to do that, uh, we can then say that yes, material stability is not required for me. So I guess it's very individual, but overall verdict would be that it depends a lot on the level of advancement of the practitioner. So for me, I can be frank and say that I want material stability. If I didn't have material stability, then as you said, I would have been anxious about that's what even Prabhupada said, right? Prabhupada also said that we should do food distribution, because if we don't feed the people, then especially the poor people, they have to struggle to meet their their kids are being malnutritioned. How can you go to them and tell that bhakti is beyond all these material considerations, you should take to it? No, they need material stability. So that is the reason we need to, we give them food, we do food for life, etc., etc. And yeah, just random thoughts coming to my mind.
Wonderful,
Nothing
Prabhu.
very structured.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing that point. And I also want to appreciate Lekha Mataji's point in the chat. She also says that I think it's very important, meaning material stability is very important. At the stage that I am at, if I'm not able to maintain basic survival needs, it will be hard for me to focus on God. I will definitely try to get my needs met first. Thank you. Sindhu Kanya Mataji, would like to say something?
Hare Krishna. So I totally agree with Jagannath Gopal Prabhu, and I really liked how Yugol Kumar Prabhu mentioned that, on the earth planet, it's the optimal place for us to be to practice God consciousness, because we sometimes are really happy, sometimes are really sad, so we can kind of find a middle ground. But what I wanted to say was that when we're in a lot of material discomfort, at least the way my brain works is I want to solve the immediate problem or the most relevant problem as soon as possible. So if I need to feed my family, or if I need to take care of a sick family member, that is the immediate thing that I need to do. And worrying about where my soul goes and where what birth I'm going to get next, those sort of things. I might not even have time to think about those things because I'm so consumed. My mind is so consumed about what I'm seeing right in front of me, which is taking care of my family or whatever other material discomfort I might have. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but I feel like that's just how it is. And it might be how it is for a lot of people. So that's why, in a way, having some sort of material stability can help, because I've seen friends, I've seen family members who have been so busy and so consumed with taking care of a material situation. I mean, I can't even ask them to chant, or I can't even ask them to like read or, think about God, because they have so much going on that, it seems near to impossible to engage in spiritual activity. So, yeah.
Wonderful point. I just wanted to summarize what you just said. So material stability is very important. And when we are materially stable, we have to increase the intensity of our devotion. If we don't increase the intensity of our devotion, then when we are hit with turbulences, we will immediately focus on the immediate and not the ultimate. So that is why it is stressed that between the gaps, between the intense situations, when you are peaceful, that's when we have to really increase our sadhana, really connect with Krishna, so that eventually we will hit those points. We will hit those down points where if we don't do it now, when everything is stable, we will not be able to do it when difficulties hit. So Sundari Sakhi Mataji.
I was just remembering one something that I've read, that sweat in peacetime so that you don't bleed in war. That's kind of what you were just saying, Gurji. And another thing I was thinking of is Bhaktivedanta Hospital was created with this thing in mind, material stability on the level of the body. When you care for the body and you make them healthy patients, and then that's when their hearts actually open up to the spiritual consciousness that's there. So that's I just wanted to add that. So I think it is very, while it is not a prerequisite to practice bhakti,
Yes.
if it is, material stability is a great facilitator, I think, to practice bhakti.
Wonderful. Very well said. So I hope it is clear. And that is why I want to bring back to that example. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is addressing a pure devotee, Vasudev Datta. And he's saying that he's telling another devotee, Shivananda Sen, to take care of Vasudev Datta's material needs. He's telling him to take care of Vasudev Datta's material needs so that he remains comfortable on the material platform, so that he can continue practicing the spiritual life. Even though if he's put in distress, he would still practice. The Lord does not want to take any chances. The Lord wants to make sure that all his material needs, his family situation is all taken care of, so that he continues to progress on this path. And similarly, today's verse also, that is what Angira Muni is saying to Chitraketu. He's asking that question. And now we can continue our discussion with the next verse. Does anybody have any questions on this, of what we discussed? So material stability is important. Don't artificially renounce it, is the point that we were just making. The next verse, who is next? Jagannath Gopal Prabhu or Megha Mataji, one of you can read.
Sorry, I want to ask a question first.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
When is the time when we say, okay, now I have acquired material stability and I don't need to run,
Yeah, so there is a difference between material need and material greed. So it is something that's very individual. And as long as our needs, our basic needs are satisfied and we are able to continue on a day-to-day basis, which most of us are on this group, then I think we are qualified enough to progress spiritually at that point. I don't think we should wait till all our greeds are met, but as long as all our needs are met. And this is something that we must really question. What is my need? If I have a need to stay in a big house, how strong is that need? For some people, that need could, staying in a big house could be greed. For some people, staying in a big house could be a need. So it is very, very individualistic. It is very, very individualistic. And we have to really question that, is this situation conducive for my spiritual growth? If I get this house, but then it can become greed easily. Okay, so we have to really question our needs and make sure that it's balanced and practice Krishna consciousness. If we are not able to practice Krishna consciousness because of some lack of needs, then we have to satisfy those needs at the material level. Otherwise, we'll not be able to, we'll always be in anxiety. We'll always be in anxiety of practicing our Krishna consciousness. Does that help, Megha? Okay, Krishnan Prabhu.
Well, Prabhu, then this leads to the other question, and I think we have discussed this before, is about living up to our true potential. So I was hearing a Prabhupada Memories audio yesterday, and it had the story of George Harrison and how George Harrison came to Srila Prabhupada and he wanted to shave off his head and he wanted to become a full-time devotee. But Prabhupada said, no, you have a different purpose, in life, and you don't need to come join the temple. You don't need to become a,
yes,
because the because there is, because we all have different potential, right? And just focusing on our needs, we may be cutting short and not living up to our true potential.
I'm not saying just focus on our needs, Prabhuji. So that is if we just focus on our needs, then we'll go down to the animal existence level. You know, animals just focus on their needs and they have no way to access the spiritual realm. They have no way to question that level. If you want to live a complete life, then we must do both. We must satisfy ourselves materially as well as access the spiritual realm. So we are in this world living a two-dimensional life. We are living materially and we want to access spiritually also. If we completely focus just on material needs, then we'll go down to the animal level. That is not at all recommended. So we have to really understand this. And while accessing the spiritual realm, if we are not satisfied materially, we will fall. We will trip and fall. So material stability is important to a certain level. Unless we are we are pure devotees. If you're pure devotees, then nothing materially, your situation will not get affected. So that's the point I wanted to make. So I hope that answers your question, Megha and Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Okay, so we can go ahead to the next verse. Yeah, so Megha or Jagannath Gopal Prabhu can read this.
Yeah, I can read.
The translation, or you want to read the Sanskrit?
I can read Sanskrit as well.
Okay.
I can try.
You can try, yeah, please.
Yeah. Atmanam prakritishtvaddha nidhaya shreya aprudyat ya ragya tatha prakritayo nardeva hitadhayah. O King, O Lord of humanity, when a king directly depends upon his associates and follows their instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when his associates offer their gifts and activities to the king and follow his orders, they are also happy. The actual happiness of a king and his dependents is described in this verse. A king should not simply give orders to his dependents because he is supreme. Sometimes he must follow their instructions. Similarly, the dependents should depend on the king. This mutual dependence will make everyone happy.
Do you want to share any thoughts or reflections on this?
I don't know in what context they're saying this, but I mean, if we think about any relationship, I mean, if we are caregivers or like anyone, then we can't just give orders, or like a boss, for example, a manager. So I, with my like shallow understanding, see this in that context, but I'm sure like there is deeper meaning in this.
Yeah. So anybody else wants to share anything on this verse? So the point here is that there's a superior person and an inferior, like a manager and an employee, or a king and his subordinates, or a guru and his disciples, and things like that. When it is like that, a relationship like that, or even Krishna and the gopis, for example. So should the superior person just keep giving orders and instructions, or is it okay for the superior person to also take instructions sometimes? That's the question that's being asked here. So Nitya is saying it's interesting that servant leadership was encouraged many thousands of years ago. Yes, Krishna Prabhu. Or who was Lekha Mataji? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, yeah. I was just hearing about like a small lecture about Ramayana today earlier, and then when Hanuman goes and sees Sita, Mother Sita, he comes back and he's like so excited, and he tells the whole monkey squad that came with him that he has seen Sita, and everybody's like reverberating. So for that squad, the next king in line is Angad. And Angad is basically put in charge as the king, although there are other seniors like Jambavan. So the way the lecturer was talking about how Jambavan, although he's not next thing in line, he is the superior, very well experienced, is a very matured minister. And according to Shastras, a king, like ministers can actually are allowed and should be influencing the king, because the king, who's the Angad here, he's very young, hot-blooded, and he actually wanted to go take the monkey squad, destroy Lanka, and bring Mother Sita right with them without even before meeting Lord Ram. So, but Jambavan, on the other hand, he stops Angad. He says, no, we should not do that, because our instruction was not to bring Mother Sita. Our instruction was to just go and see if Mother Sita is there. And according to Mother Sita's words, she wants to be rescued by Rama. Like she does not want us to go and rescue her. So our duty, as much as we want to destroy Lanka and Ravana, we should go back to Lord Ram, tell him about what happened, and then we will come together and wage war with the Lanka. So I think, and Angad actually he accepts it. He says that, Minister Jamban, you're very experienced and you're very matured. I will obey your orders, because your wisdom is unparalleled to mine. And they all go back and meet Lord Ram, and then rest is history. So I think maybe superiors, it need not always be just like a one-way relationship where just orders are constantly given. I think even in our like wherever we are working, like companies, we always see that there is a board of directors. It's not just like one CEO taking the decision for the whole company. There are board of directors who are definitely sub senior to him or her, but then they also push back, they give suggestions, and they all lead the company together under the leadership of that superior.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mataji. I mean, very well said. So there are two more devotees who want to speak. Jagannath Gopal Prabhu, please go ahead.
So I think in this particular case, right, the example of the king, where he, sometimes listens to his associates. I think, and even with, our interpersonal relationships that Megha Mataji spoke about, I think the central focus has to be love. Then these exchanges can happen. Like, for instance, even like we know, for instance, Radhanath Maharaj himself, right? The team of his doctors, they literally give him orders. Maharaj, you cannot do this. You cannot do this. You should do this. Like, it's in one sense they're instructing him, but then all that is happening out of love, out of pure love for Maharaj. Similarly, we see in Lord Chaitanya's Leela also in many cases, like once Mahaprabhu was taking darshan of Lord Jagannath, and he went into so much ecstasy that he started running towards the deities of Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra. I think that is the pastime. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And then there is a Mataji there. She's taking darshan of Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra.
Yes.
Mahaprabhu was so excited that he was going to climb on that Mataji and then, jump on the other side, something like that.
No, she climbed on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take darshan. And
okay.
And in spite of that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not stop her, because even though she was a Mataji, he was a sannyasi, and everybody was like, oh, you can't climb on the Lord, but he stopped everyone because she was so much in devotion that he allowed her to do it.
No. He allowed her to do it, but there is one more pastime that he was going to, in his ecstasy, he was going to get into a situation where it would have been, people would have used that to defame him. I'm pretty sure that there is this instance. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that time, I don't know who was his personal servant. He said, no, Mahaprabhu, you can't go. He literally held Mahaprabhu in that ecstasy. He didn't let him go. And then when Mahaprabhu came back in consciousness and he heard what happened, then he actually thanked that devotee.
Thank the devotee. Yeah.
Thank you. You saved me.
Yes.
So, so I guess in all these instances where, there is an inversion of control in one sense, it's all, the center is love. Even for that matter, you take Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna is becoming the Sarthi of Arjuna, right? Arjuna is kicking Krishna to give him directions, go this side, go that side. So in that sense, the servant is giving an giving an instruction to the master, but then that is again out of love. It's
Yeah.
not out of, a spirit of exploitation. When that spirit of exploitation comes, then we have to check. Because now if I were to give orders to Maharaj, suddenly that pride will come in me. Oh yeah, I can tell Maharaj what to do. I must be a great person. If that emotion is coming in me, then that's a big red flag. I better be a humble servant and serve Maharaj and take instructions from him, rather than trying to be a very big person and instruct him and tell him to do things and things like that. So I guess the love has to be the basis. Otherwise it becomes mutual exploitation, and then the relationship gets hampered in a bad way. So
yeah, brilliant. I mean, I really liked how you went to the crux of this, because that's what I wanted to share with everyone. So this is from the same canto, 16th chapter. This is a verse by Chitraketu himself. So he's saying here, I mean, this is about the Lord and the devotee. He's saying, "Oh, unconquerable Lord, Ajita is unconquerable." Okay, Ajita is unconquerable. Although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you're certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. So this is in relation to your point, Jagannath Gopal Prabhu. If we were to do this with Maharaj or someone, and if we don't have control over our mind or senses, then we will be completely bewildered. We could get into pride and things like that. So you're certainly conquered by devotees who have control of mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Here's another qualification. Only when a devotee desires no material profit from the Lord, only then can they control the Lord. Again, this is completely based on the love principle that Jagannath Gopal Prabhu was mentioning. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees. This last line is very nice. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees. So, of course, Srila Prabhupada really elaborates this. It's a beautiful purport. I strongly recommend this. The Lord and the devotees both conquer. The Lord is conquered by the devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. Because of being conquered by one another, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. Again, the concept of love. The highest perfection of this mutual conquering is exhibited by Krishna and the gopis. The gopis conquered Krishna, and Krishna conquered the gopis. Thus, whenever Krishna played his flute, he conquered the minds of the gopis, and without seeing the gopis, Krishna could not be happy. Other transcendentalists, such as Gyanis and Yogis, cannot conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only pure devotees can conquer him. So there are several examples that I found from several different scriptures. So this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 684. Here also, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, you can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate in order to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. So in this particular purport also, here, this is what the Lord is known as Ajita, unconquerable. No one can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the Lord consents to be conquered by his devotees. That is his nature. And in the Padma Purana, this is a very famous verse, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi. So by being pleased by devotional activities, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees. That is the way to understand him. So any thoughts or questions on this? Vamshidhar Gopal Prabhu, would you like to say something? Okay. Krishnan Prabhu, do you want to talk a little bit about servant leadership? I know you've been listening to some podcasts and some nice discussions on this particular topic.
Yeah, no, Hare Krishna. This was, I think this was very, very nice to see an example of servant leadership, like Nitya Mataji also said. the aspect of love, which is also so interesting, because when Krishna comes back to Dwaraka, and the way he interacts with everybody in Dwaraka, right from all the people who he meets, like the laborers or the women who are in the buildings looking down upon him, and looking at him, and all his relatives, all his friends, and that's almost like a person, it's almost like a practical example of ye yatamam prapadyante, that verse in the Bhagavad Gita. So about servant leadership, suddenly, I'm not getting any thoughts other than the fact that the best leader is one who seeks to serve the people that he or she is leading. And of course, this can be elaborated on, and there are examples, both from the Bible and from Lord Krishna's life, that really embody this principle.
Yeah, brilliant. And who seeks to serve means seeks to be controlled also. It's the same thing, actually. If somebody seeks to be served by the subordinates, that means they seek to be controlled. There's some humility there as well, which humility. Oh, yeah, you just mentioned humility is usually stressed in spiritual life. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. And if nobody has any other points, you can go to the next verse. Okay. Next is 6:14:19. Jagannath Gopal Prabhu or Nitya, one of the two can read.
You want to go, Mataji, or?
Please go ahead, Prabhu. I'll go next.
Apidaraha prajamatya bhrityah shrenyo mantrinaha paura jana pada bhupa atmaja vashavartinaha. Translation. O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries, and servants, and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you also in full control of ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, your sons, and your other dependents? Purport. The master or king and his subordinates should be interdependent. Through cooperation, both of them can be happy. Yeah, this is just like a continuation of the previous theme, I guess.
Yes. Thank you. You want to add anything, Prabhu, or should we move on?
Nothing much, Prabhu. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So next verse, Nitya can read this. 6:14:20.
Yasyatmana vasaschet syat sarvate sarve tadvasagat ime loka sapala yachante sarve balam atandritaha. Translation. If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and governmental officers are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time without resistance. And what to speak of lesser servants? Purport. Angira Rishi asked the king whether his mind was also under control. This is the most essential for happiness. Just one thought just comes to my mind is that when, we also ask people, hey, how are you doing? And then we usually say, we pretty much just expect them to say sometimes, yeah, I'm good or well. But we actually are shocked when we say, I'm not that good, right? And then we ask, but then we, this is like an example of a person, of a Rishi like Angira Rishi, who actually, when he asks, how are you? He's asking in so many ways, I'm not just asking how you are. When I'm asking how are you, we saw a couple of verses back, I'm asking about how your family is, how your wealth is, how your servants are doing. how we are materially situated. And then here on the last verse also we see, I just want to just a little bit go back to the last verse.
Yeah.
And we see the, how are your merchants, spice, oil, who sells spices and oil, are they under control, full of ministers? I mean, this is like really asking how you're doing. It's not just a namesake or a superficial how you're doing. And I mean, it's just a nice reminder for us to also practice this at least in our close friends / family circle. We can, when we really ask them, we can probably, really mean them. Yeah, apart from that, yeah, I really like that whether your mind is also under control. Because I mean, those days, rishis, they know what is actually the state of the king's mind. I mean, we saw that the last verse of the last class was without any prior engagement. We saw that Angira Rishi just happened to come there. Even though he didn't have full engagement or any engagement, he just out of blue he came. I'm sure that rishis in those days have power to know or predict what is the state of affairs for any king. And like, for example, Narada Muni. Narada Muni knows exactly when to show up in a time, place, circumstance. So am I right in thinking that? I know that Angira Muni and Narada Muni are of slightly different caliber, but I just want to know if that's the right sense here.
Yeah,
like,
it's so interesting that you mentioned Narad Muni here, because later on, as the pastime
Yeah.
unfolds, Narad Muni and Angira Muni both come to.
Right.
So it is very much connected. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that they already know something is going on in that. A person just going on marrying wives is also one thing, but then the internal state of the king's mind is also questionable. That's why this question is particularly important, where he's asking about his mind under control.
Yeah.
So just wanted to.
Yeah. So it's so interesting that Angira Muni is asking all these questions, because he knows that something is wrong materially. And he knows that because of this, the king is in some anxiety. The anxiety is, of course, because that he does not have a son. But clearly, the Angira Muni wants him to open up, So that's why he's asking. And also this point about mind being fully controlled is also very important, because if the mind is not fully controlled, then we can start reacting to situations. We don't respond, but we react. And when we react immediately, suddenly, in passion, then our mind is not fully controlled. It's not under our control. It just reacts, and that is dangerous. But if someone's mind and senses are controlled, then that person is peaceful, and that also helps in practicing devotional service, as we saw in the verse that I shared previously. So I just wanted to highlight that point as well. And Srila Prabhupada also mentions the mind being under control is the most essential for happiness. If a mind is not controlled, it can be a worst of enemies, as Krishna also mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, so we can move on to the next verse, 6:14:21. Who is next? Is Lekha Mataji there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Lekha Mataji, please go ahead.
Yeah. Atmanah priyatenatma paratah spata eva vam lakshaye labdhakamam tvam
Sorry.
Chintayas shabalam mukam. Translation. O King Chitraketu, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. You seem not to have achieved your desired goal. Is this because of you yourself, or has it been caused by others? Your pale face reflects your deep anxiety. I like how Angira Rishi asks about whether this distress is caused by you yourself or by others. I think this is a very relatable relatable situation that most of us face. Was like some of the kleshas are self-inflicted, but mostly a lot of them actually come from the environment that's surrounding us.
Yeah, wonderful. Adhyatmika, Adidaivika, and Adi Bhautika. These are the three kleshas, and here it's Adhyatmika and Adi Bhautika. So, yeah, is this distress caused by yourself, or is it caused by other living entities? So that's the question. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else wants to share anything, or should we move on? And he's also noticing your pale face reflects deep anxiety. Yes, Krishna. Somebody wanted to speak. Okay, sorry. Let's move on. 6-4.
Megha wants to talk again.
Sorry, Omega, go ahead.
It is answered like in the next verse, but how do we define, like sometimes it's clear like that this dukkha is inflicted by others, but then it's not easy to define in certain situations. Like let's say many bad things are happening, somebody said us something. I don't know, sometimes we overthink, like, so how do we define like whether this is I'm inflicting this pain to myself, or like it is inflicted by someone else, because in a way we can't really control the world. So in a way, like many of the dukkhas we inflict on ourselves, the way we perceive them.
Yeah. So it's a 3-level thing. So Adi Daivika is the external influences, which like earthquakes and hurricanes and things like that, where we have absolutely no control. And then Adi Bhautika, where we have some control. And Adi Atmika is where we have control, because we can control our minds. If we control our minds, no matter what happens externally, if others are inflicting pain or if some natural disasters happen, it won't affect you that much. So the point is that if we work on our inner self and start practicing mind control and things like that, then by connecting to Krishna ideally, then we will be able to face all these other kleshas very easily. That's the point here. So we can easily identify. So for example, here in this particular pastime, now Chitraketu is kind of, you can say, inflicting this pain upon himself, because he is thinking about what's going to happen later on after he dies. Will he have a son who will carry on the dynasty? And what if he doesn't get a son? It's almost like his mind is just playing games here. It's causing him a lot of fears, a lot of anxieties. But in one sense, he could have just focused on God and he could have elevated his consciousness. But here is where, again, the same point comes, that materially he had a need for having a child. And because of that, his mind was troubling him. If he was a pure soul, if he was able to control his mind, then these anxieties would not have come, is what. So this is clearly an Adi Atmika klesha. He's inflicting this pain upon himself. And you will see in the next verse, it gets answered as well. Any other thoughts on anything?
Can I share a quick thought, which
Yes, please.
this reminds me of a Buddhist story. It's typically explained with 2 arrows. I was quickly browsing, I was quickly searching. If you just search for 2 arrows and Buddhist story, usually it comes up. So it says, picture yourself walking through a forest. Suddenly you're hit by an arrow. The first arrow is an actual bad event which can cause pain, but it isn't over yet. There is a second arrow. The second arrow brings more pain and suffering. So the question is, can you avoid the second arrow? The second arrow actually represents our reaction to the bad event. And it is the manner in which we chose to respond to it emotionally. So this is a common way in which in Buddhist parables, this is used to explain how, I think it's Adi, like you said, Adi Atmika. Yeah. Just thought I'll share that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. So many times, what we think is going to cause, like, as you said, the first arrow causes some pain, but us thinking more about it, the emotion sometimes can cause more pain than the actual pain itself.
Yes.
So that's the point. Yeah, thank you. So next, who's next? Megha, I think. Please go ahead.
Shukdev Goswami said, O King Parikshit, although the great sage Angira knew everything, he inquired from the king in this way. Thus King Chitraketu, desiring a son, bent low in great humility and spoke to the great sage as follows. Since the face is the index to the mind, a saintly person can study the condition of one's mind by seeing his face. When Angira Rishi remarked about the king's discolored face, King Chitraketu explained the cause of his anxiety as follows.
Do you want to share anything on this?
Yeah, this is an example of like, what do you say, experienced or like enlightened person. They know so much, and the importance of having such a person in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
This reminds me of a pastime of Radhanath Maharaj where a brahmachari went to meet him, and the brahmachari was going through some difficulty in his life and some issue. I don't remember exactly what. And then he was serving Maharaj, and he served for a while, and then they were in the same room, and then after some time Maharaj started talking to him, and Maharaj exactly understood what he was going through and everything. And then he was very amazed, this brahmachari, this devotee. He asked, how did you know this, Maharaj? How come you understood? So he said, I just observed you properly. I understood the basics. I learned the basics of spiritual life just by observing nature. So just by observing you, I can understand many things, Maharaj said. So this, when in the purport it's written, since the face is the index to the mind, a saintly person can study the condition of one's mind by seeing his face. So I remembered this pastime where Maharaj understood what was going on in the devotee's mind just by looking at him. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. Very nice. Thank you. Next verse, Jagannath Gopal Prabhu.
Yes. Chitraketur uvacha Bhagavan kim na viditam tapodhyana samadhibhihi yoginam dhvasta papanam bahir antah sharirishu. Translation. King Chitraketu said, O great Lord Angira, because of austerity, knowledge, and transcendental samadhi, you are freed from all the reactions of sinful life. Therefore, as a perfect yogi, you can understand everything external and internal regarding embodied conditioned souls like us. So now Chitraketu Maharaj has started talking to Angira Muni, and he has started by praising Angira Muni, by glorifying Angira. So this is a lesson for us in the sense that when we have guests, especially great souls, we should speak nice words about them. Of course, it's not that when I go to Gaur Kumar Prabhu next time, or Gaur Kumar Prabhu comes to me, I'm going to make him sit and oh Gaur Kumar Prabhu, your austerity, your knowledge. Of course, that is all true, definitely. But this is the way they used to do at that time. But the kind of relation we have, we can try to speak nice things about the other person, and like that. And I have seen this. Of course, this is not applicable in this case. Even when devotees offer corrections, especially the very senior and mature devotees, they first glorify the good points and then they offer feedback. So that is also, so glorification softens the heart of a truly saintly person. It brings about pride in a conditioned soul like me, but a truly saintly person, when he hears his or her own glorification, they think that this is their guru is being glorified, the Lord is being glorified, because whatever they are is because of the mercy of their guru. So that way, hearing one's own glorification humbles such genuine devotees. But for you know prideful people like me, it brings about pride.
No. You're not. You're not proud in any way, Prabhu. So, but thank you for mentioning that, because I also know that even in corporate world, before a feedback is given, they say that you must praise that person before and after, and like the feedback is given in the middle, like in a sandwich. So you must praise him before and after. So it'll feel good. So that happens there also. Just remember that. Krishnan Prabhu, please go ahead.
Actually, I want to share something that I heard from Radhesham Prabhu many years ago. He says that whenever you meet a saintly person, should never say to them, how are you, or how are you doing, and all that. You should always share with them what you learned from them, or how their words inspired you. And that gives them, more joy than anything else that you say. So I've tried to remember it every time I meet an accomplished soul, to do that. It's very difficult to remember it all the time, but I remember him saying, teaching us that.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. In fact, many times I've heard Gaurang Prabhu, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu always tell me that, okay, you liked my class, but what specifically did you like in my class? So I've heard that. That actually pleases them. So thank you, Krishnan Prabhu. That's a great point. So we have 2 more verses to complete, 3 more, 24, 25, 26. So Nitya can go with this.
One second. Tatapi prachito bruyam brahman atmani chintitam bhavato viditas chapi choditas tvad anunyaya nyaya. Translation. O great soul, you are aware of everything, yet you're asking me why I'm full of anxiety. Therefore, in response to your order, let me disclose the cause. Should we just continue?
Yes.
Shall I read this also?
Yes, please.
Lokapalir api pratya samrajyaishvarya sampada nanandayanti aprajamam shutrit kamam vivapare. Translation. As a person aggrieved by hunger and thirst is not pleased by the external gratification of flower garlands or sandalwood pulp, I am not pleased with my empire, opulence, or possessions, which are desirable even for great demigods, because I have no son.
Yeah, do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like what we talked about before. I think Sindhu Kanya also kind of touched on this, that if a person has, some complete distress, and we try to give them, make them, okay, you chant or you read or you say something spiritual and elevate them. That is not what they are looking for. Their basic needs of their relief from distress is what they are trying to get at. If we can provide that, then that is what will most please them. And then as a next step, maybe out of gratitude or out of their own accord, they might take up to the process, spiritual process. But if a person is basic hunger and thirst needs are are not met, then if we shower them with anything higher than that, like what Chitraketu is saying is about giving flower garlands or sandalwood pulp, it's not, none of this actually just matters at all for them, because what they want is, or what they need, or what they lack, what is causing anxiety for them is completely different. And so yeah,
so this is the point. This is one of the things of this particular pastime. This is the essence of this pastime, like how Angira Muni actually tackles the situation. He could have just told him, hey, just let go of these material things. You don't need to have a son. Let's just focus on God. He could have told him right there, but he did not, because he said that, okay, I'm going to do a yagya, I'm going to give you a son. And then later on, when the son dies, then he actually gives him the higher spiritual truth. So sometimes, as you rightly said, when there is a person going through some difficulty, we have to address the immediate difficulty of that person rather than giving philosophy at that time. So that is the crux of this particular pastime as well. So Megha Mataji wanted to ask something. Yes.
Yeah, so here, so that's what my point. How do we define like when our needs are met? Because here he himself sort of says that, okay, I have empire, opulence, so he has all these things, but still he has just like, he doesn't have son, and he's so focused on that,
yes,
like forgetting what he has. So that doesn't seem like a need, like technically speaking, but then for him, it is his need.
Yes, exactly. That's what I said, right? So for somebody, having a palace may not be a need, it may be a greed. But for another person, having a palace could be their need. In this particular case, for Chitraketu, having a son was a very strong need, very, very strong need. And he was able to identify that need. And he was able to express that also. He's processed it, he's analyzed it, and he's saying that he cannot even move ahead without satisfying that need. So that need has to be satisfied. It's very, very clear for him. If you're not able to move ahead, that means you know that is a strong need. But if you're able to continue on with your life, then it could be greed.
So it's not like strong desire. Like, let's say I want to go to Harvard, right? And
Yes.
I have this strong desire, like I really want to go, and I'm unable to focus on anything else. But I mean, it's not like, like it's just a very strong desire, then a need.
Yeah. You're touching on a very crucial point here, the strong desire versus need. So need is something which if it does not happen, like for example, if you don't get into Harvard, it's not the end of your life. You'll be happy going somewhere else or getting a job, or you have other options. It's not like that has to happen. But let's say there's no other option and your life will get completely messed up if you don't get into Harvard, and you know that you have that strong need, then that has to happen for you. Otherwise, you'll be miserable. Then it's a need. Like in the case of Chitraketu, he's got everything else, but that one thing is not there. And that is like messing up completely. Does that make sense? Krishna Prabhu wants to say something. Maybe I'm not.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, but if that is it, then doesn't that tip over to greed?
No, because he's not able to even function now. Like he's completely he's not able to even move. He's become depressed because of this, not having this one particular thing.
That's right. But even greed can make me depressed, which is, where I don't really need something. Let's say there is something that I really desire or covet, and it may not be something that I need, but if I continue desiring it, isn't that when it becomes greed? In this case,
yeah.
In this case, he could have very well, been fine without a son.
No. he could have been fine, but he tried. He married 1 million wives. He married 1 million wives. He tried everything that he could because it was such a strong need for him. If it is just a strong desire and you don't do anything about it and you become depressed, that's a different thing. But if you're trying and trying and trying and it's just not happening, like that particular need is not getting satisfied, then that is the point at which Chitraketu is right now.
Yeah, but I think it's semantics. Somehow I see it as greed, but it's semantics. I would like to connect it to a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, that Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshaba. So I think kama is okay, which is desire is okay, as long as it's not dharma viruddho. That's the way I understood that verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Any thoughts? Maybe you, Gaurakumar Prabhu, or
so Nitya,
because here I don't know if it's kama, because it doesn't, at least the word doesn't appear here anywhere, but it looks like somehow it feels like kama to me. I'm
not able to, but I still feel that it's not a greed, it's a need. I am not able to. Maybe someone else can. How do we?
I guess we have to see from where that desire is coming, because in the sense that for a king, he has to have a son. That was the culture that time, that he had to have a son, not for his own kind of selfish enjoyment or anything, because he really cared about the praja. He cared about his people, and he wanted to have a worthy descendant who could be the next king. And so even with our desires, right, when we have a desire, let's say anything, for instance, like Megha Mataji mentioned, let's say there is somebody gets a desire to go to Harvard. Now, one way to understand whether that is a need or greed, we can think of from where is that desire coming. Is that desire coming because we have seen the glory that a Harvard person gets, and we want to bask in that glory and just forget about everything else? Or is it that I am so intellectually advanced that just for my survival I need to be in that atmosphere where there are others with that intellectual capacity, right? That is one place from where that desire could come. Or that desire could come by by the society. We see in India it often happens, "Arey, tune IIT nahi kiya, you didn't do IIT, what is the use of your life? Useless." So we get that desire from that. Like I had a desire so we have to kind of evaluate from where that desire is coming, and that will give us a clear picture, I think, whether may not be a clear picture, but we can at least go to whether it's a borrowed desire or whether it's something we really want.
Can I add a fourth? Prabhu, which is that I desire to that I want to go to Harvard because that is the best utilization of my capacity and my desire to serve in the field of my choice. That could be a.
That is perfect, Prabhu. That is perfect.
See, again, I think, we are coming to those 4 points that I always mention, that the motive could be fear, reciprocation, duty, or love. So if it is fear, reciprocation, or duty, it could be a desire. But if it is completely out of love, then it could be a need. Like, for example, I want to go to Harvard because I really love the subject. I really want to excel there. It's a strong need for me. But if I want to go to Harvard, like how Jagannath Gopal Prabhu was saying, that I want to go to Harvard because I want to bask in the glory, then it becomes reciprocation. Or because someone else is going, then it becomes like a duty. Somebody else is influencing me. So if it is purely out of love, and if it is a very strong desire, I feel that becomes a need. That's another way of looking at it. I was just thinking, but if someone else wanted to speak, Nitya wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just, our minds are so advanced in this. it can easily, justify that, yeah, it is a, I truly deserve, I love this subject so much that I want to join Harvard. And at the same time, it can also be a desire. So both things could be there at equal level, right? I mean, I'm so good at this subject. I love this subject. I really feel that Harvard is the best university for me to express my my skill set, express my love for the subject. And at the same time, yeah, why not, while I'm there, why not bask in the glory? So it could be both. I mean, mind can easily. So, so Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, when he was visiting us once in our home, I asked something, not completely in this parallel lines with this, but something like, I try so much for therapies for Radha, and this was when she was not even walking, and we tried like endless therapies. We spent so much money on just trying to just get her to move out of her stagnant position. For like 2 years, she was just sitting there without walking or even crawling. So we tried a lot. And I asked, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, this is bothering me a lot. I really want her to walk. That is a really, greater need for me at that point. And how do I make this so that it's not completely overwhelming my life? How do I do this? And then what Chaitanya Charan Prabhu said was, I still apply this in many parts of my my life, even now, is that just check whether you are doing over underwear. Like, are you over underwearing for that need? That is not called for that you should not do. That's what he said. So whenever we are catching ourselves, okay, we know that in a scale of like how long we want to try for Harvard University, let's say 10 years, 20 years, how long am I going to underwear for this? Right? How if after some time it says enough is enough, then we move on. So put a kind of a time frame or whatever it is, like calculable end point, right? After that point, it becomes over and over. Then it's like, okay, this is it for me, and I, after this point, I'm not going to try anymore. Then at that point, I know that I've given all my best, and there's nothing I can do about it after that point. Even after that point of saturation, we still keep trying. Then it becomes a obsession. Then it becomes a need turning to be a greed. That's what he said.
So in this particular case, then Chitraketu had greed, not need.
Yes. So, I mean, it's clearly he's over and aware, right? I mean, I'm sorry. 10 million wives is really, I don't know. I mean, if we have to take a lesson, of course, this is, Chitraketu's life is for teaching a different lesson for us. And, for furthering the pastime, many things happen, but not that everything in Bhagavatam can be applied in verbatim to our lives, right? So if we have a desire like Chitraketu, like let's say let's say somebody wants a son, need a son, and they're not getting it. How long, there should be some kind of end point where, okay, after this point, I would have tried everything, and that is where I'm going to stop. After this, I'm not going to try, because I would have given the best. I would have endeavored everything that was to be endeavored, and beyond that point, it would be an over endeavor. So we have to kind of decide, and for each person, it's different. That's all. Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to even think about marrying 10 million wives.
So Megha, are you happy with this answer?
I don't know.
Are you happy to go to Harvard now? Is it a need or a greed? Please tell us. I know she's going to Harvard now, so.
Maybe it's a greed, I know, but I think like Nitya Mataji's practical advice, like over endeavoring in my student journey or whatever stage I am, like for me, like, it's a good thing to check so that nothing becomes an obsession in a negative way.
Krishnan Prabhu, you want to end with some thoughts?
No, I thought that was really good advice because, at a certain point, endeavor is extremely important because we want to try our best to do whatever we can do. It may not be about this, but it may be about achieving something else. It may not be like, getting a son or something, but it may be about getting something else, maybe getting into this college of our desire or getting the job that we want. So endeavor is really important, but the over endeavor is where there is a likelihood of it becoming an obsession, like Megha Mataji said. And that is where the point is where it can tip over to becoming an obsession and a greed. So that is one point that I would like to make. But the other point that I also appreciate from the Jagannath Gopal Prabhu said is maybe his endeavor is because he is a king, and the intent, like the other thing that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu always says is about intent and content. Maybe his intent is genuine. He wants to get his kingdom to have a good king after him. Maybe his intent is good, and he's we can't read his mind. Maybe he's depressed because he's not able to serve his kingdom by offering a child who can become the next king.
Yeah, wonderful.
Even with that point that Mataji mentioned, right, that the mind can play tricks. The mind can say that, I want to go to Harvard because I love the subject, but yeah, along with that, I can get some glory. So even when the mind tricks us, right, we have to be honest with ourselves and ask, what is the predominant desire here? Is the predominant desire to bask in the glory, and that's why am I making an excuse to say that I love the subject? Or I love the subject and I am okay with the the subsequent comforts that I may get, the glory that I may get. So like that. I don't know. It's
also one thing that comes to my mind from a practical viewpoint is, how do we know how much endeavor is good and how many, like, when do we know when to stop? Like, should we keep on trying or should we stop at a certain point when we know that it becomes greed? So that is also a little tricky to identify that point. So that's why I feel that you should have a mentor or guide or someone who can actually see from outside and say that, hey, this is going way beyond, and so now stop. So I think that is necessary. And that is why Angira Muni is also coming here to guide him. Otherwise, he could have just gone on and on and on, like doing whatever he could. But somehow, if we have that, then I feel that someone else externally should come and guide us. Otherwise, it's impossible for us to. Our mind can play so many tricks, as Jagannath Gopal Prabhu said. So I think.
Another quick point I'll make again, quoting Radheshyam Prabhu. Radheshyam Prabhu talks about him writing IIT in his qualifications whenever he creates the flyers.
Yeah.
And I believe, he's run it by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. And Radhanath Maharaj, I believe, has told him that, as long as it helps you with your preaching and it brings more people to listen to you, there's no harm in doing that. And, as long as it doesn't go to your head so I don't know if you remember him talking about this, but he's mentioned it a few times in his classes.
Yes. So on that note, we can end. So Megha, do you want to say something finally about Harvard and need and greed? Can summarize?
A lot of points mentioned here. I guess there is no conclusion yet, like whether it was a need or greed for Chitraketu. But we have so many takeaways for us. So for me personally, it's as I said, like endeavoring endeavoring versus over endeavoring. We can practically set a time frame, and then, as you said, we can strive to have a good mentor. you know. So about this thing, like that's my like, and one more thing that Jagannath Prabhu said about like the desire behind it, and as Krishna Prabhu said, like using that IIT name, like what's the motivation behind that? You know, so I guess these three points.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, very nicely summarized. If anybody else wants to say anything, we can take that comment, and otherwise we can end now. Okay, so we can end now. So yeah, Krishna Prabhu. Okay, so Vansha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyascha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava. Srila Prabhupada. Thank you all so much, dear devotees. So next week it's going to be Sindhu Kanya Mataji leading the discussion. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.